Guns, Martinis, gadgets, and guns. 50, is it 50 years ago today, Kat? Is it 50?
Today is the 50th anniversary of the UK release
Hang on,
of
that's
Live
all I
and Let
needed.
Die.
All I needed was the 50. 50 years ago today, the world was changed
Not
by
prepared.
one man, Simon Templar. Bond. James Bond was back with your dad's favorite James Bond, Roger
We've been
Moore.
bullshitting for 45 minutes and you weren't prepared.
Shush. Today, I didn't mean to shush you. I'm sorry, that was rude.
You've
But
wasted the
today
perfect. You've wasted the perfect Sergeant Pepper's joke there, right? Because
Wait, I'm not done the intro. Today we celebrate the blaxploitation Bond, the second best Felix Leiter for the first time, Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, Parker from the Nostromo, crisp and clean, no caffeine, and the UNICEF ambassador himself, Sir Roger. Let's do this well. Let's give the other fella hell. 1973's Live and Let Die. My name is Scotty R37. Tony is M. My opposite number, Kat, is here. And Steve sticks out like a damned cue ball. Welcome to our 50th anniversary celebration of Live and Let Die.
And I dispute the notion that David Hedison is the second best Felix.
Who do you think is the second best Felix?
Jeffrey Wright.
Oh, good answer.
Ooh.
The first, for me, has got to be the original.
Jack Lord.
Yes.
Lord.
Jack Lord.
Definitely
yeah.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of this movie. And the reason that I threw your dad's James Bond in there is that I think that this is my dad's favorite James Bond movie.
I think my dad's favorite was Goldfinger, I think. Yeah.
I think that was the same for my dad, too. No, his favorite was actually Thunderball. He told me how he bugged his dad to take him to see it in 1965 when he was 11 years old. And then his dad didn't really want to go because he's like, I'm not into this. And then they got home and his dad's like, damn, it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
I do remember Live and Let Die, though, being one of my first favorite Bond films when I first saw it sometime in the late 90s. It was my favorite for quite a while.
Yeah, same. I remember when I first saw it, and it was just so radically different from anything else because it had there was so much crazy stuff going on with the Baron Samedi and all that stuff. It was just so
French.
Crazy.
It's Samedi.
Yeah, Samedi. Sorry, I was thinking.
Is it Samedi? I may be mispronouncing.
Pronunciations.
Yeah, not
regional.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It was so completely different. And it was 50 years ago today that Major Boothroyd taught James Bond to walk on the backs of alligators.
Which is not in the film.
For sure it's in the film. He runs across the backs of alligators.
But Major Boothroyd is not in the film.
No, he's not. No, Major Boothroyd isn't in the film. But I'm just guessing. I'm just guessing that it was probably him that taught him how to do it, just because, just because. But also, it was the Paul McCartney, Sergeant Pepper's joke that we didn't get in at the beginning. Yeah, sorry.
Well, why not start with the beginning?
Yeah.
How do you feel about Live and Let Die, the film and the song? What is your favorite?
I like the song. Maybe not as much as everybody else does. It's a good song.
Yeah.
I noted that this is one of the more unique pre-title sequences in the series because it has 3 different scenes, none of which Bond is even in, that just take place 2 different countries, 3 places, and you have these random assassinations going on. And it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of new,
Yeah. Also, it's weird. I think most of the promotional material for this film had Bond holding a big old magnum, right? A big old magnum, which is kind of unusual. I mean, not only is it a revolver, but it's a big old magnum, which you'd think would melt in that heat, but apparently not.
Well, and also, like, Roger Moore as James Bond is stuffy, in my opinion. He is very much the saint in this. That's why I sort of dropped to Simon Templar. Like, he's being charming, but he's also being snooty and British. I don't like him. I don't think he has the charm in this film. I think it's the supporting cast that really makes the movie pop, if you will. Jane Seymour, oh my God, smoke show. And if you have the opportunity to check out the special features on the DVD, there's a like behind the scenes footage of Jane Seymour dancing in 1972, and it's like, oh wow, hotness.
This is pre Eye of the Tiger as well, so yeah.
I haven't seen Eye of the Tiger.
How can you not have seen Eye of the Tiger? Being
I heard it was the thrill of the fight.
But another thing too, all of those dance sequences were choreographed by Jeffrey Holder, who plays Baron Samedi in the film.
Yeah,
amazing.
And he did a really great job on the choreography. And I remember seeing that behind the scenes footage. I'm like, this movie just looked like it was a really fun set to be on.
Well, and part of the reason that I want to talk about Live and Let Die is also to celebrate the actors. But Jeffrey Holder in Annie with Albert Finney, great, fantastic,
amazing, yeah, definitely.
I don't want to say his name because I'll get canceled, but him in that movie, great.
Oh yeah, he's great. But
what's his name in Annie?
In Annie, what? Oh yeah, sorry. I was thinking.
Yeah, we can't say it. We cannot say it.
Let's not go there. Let's not talk. Well, and also
Annie's not a family-friendly film.
Speaking of Live and Let Die, we probably can't say about 75% of what actually transpires in the book either. So let's not go there. But see, again, we've been talking about this before, and we've been talking about the infamous idea that Sean Connery's character from The Rock was actually the original James Bond, and that somehow there was a replacement. Obviously, they brought in some replacements while he was incarcerated in Alcatraz, and one of those was Simon Templar.
Simon Templar was recruited, as was Remington Steele.
Exactly. And I think, unfortunately, because Dynamite Comics aren't allowed to use any of the film likenesses or the likenesses of the characters in their comics, they can't actually do this. But in my head, there is a comic that goes in between Diamonds Are Forever and Live and Let Die, where Bond goes up against Simon Templar. They end up working together, and something happens to Bond. In this case, he probably gets captured and sent to Alcatraz, and then Simon Templar becomes the new Bond until they can get him back.
If we're just recording fan fiction, then I'm going to say that Sean Connery teams up with Napoleon Solo and Ilya Kurylenko, and then Napoleon Solo betrays Bond, and that's how he ends up in The Rock.
Well, I will say that I did actually recently reread the book, read the book within the last few days. Very, very different than the movie.
Very different.
So the book.
Well, and I think I've also read the book, and from my recollection, because I read it a whiles back, but like this is where you get a lot of the action sequences for many films, a lot of things that happen in a bunch. Like you get License to Kill stuff in this with Felix Leiter getting eaten by a shark.
Yep.
You get the For Your Eyes Only Coral being dragged through.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of stuff in this book. This is an action-packed book.
That's actually about it. Yeah. Actually, Scott. That's actually about it as far as action goes in this book.
Yeah. And the fact that
when I read it,
the fact that the MacGuffin, the big thing that Mr. Big's after, is pirate treasure. It's that pirate treasure. Yeah, Blackbeard and
Bloody Morgan.
And Edward English. They didn't spend all their money on prostitutes and alcohol. They went and they dug a hole and they put it in the hole. And if you don't believe that, then you're a bigger cynic than I am.
Now, the first 9 chapters of the book breeze by pretty quickly, and it's great because it starts with Bond meeting Felix in New York, and they're talking about Mr. Big, and we think he's using gold from the pirate gold to fund Soviet agents in the United States, and then we get a flashback scene where Bond first got the dossier from M detailing what the mission's about, and then he gets to go meet Felix up in Harlem. They go to, it's not the Filet of Soul, but they go into one of the clubs there, and the same thing happens where he gets taken down below. He gets captured, and he gets his finger broken, and Solly meets Solitaire, and she does the reading for him, and she seems to be a genuine medium, and it's like the book is initially off to a really good
Caucasian in the book.
What?
Is Solitaire a Caucasian in the book?
Yes, she's French, or French born from Haiti, and her name is Simone Luttrell. That's her real
big
name.
Shout out to Simone.
And once Bond gets the phone call from her the next day where she wants to run away with him and get away, that's where the book radically slows down and gets bogged down in an excessive amount of descriptions, which he didn't use in the first 9 chapters. He kept a really good pace and describing things rather well, but it's the same thing like when I read Dr. No for the video we did on that, where everything before Crab Key is really good, really great pacing and stuff. But once you go to Crab Key, it just this really slow trudge through the jungle. And once he goes to pick up Solitaire at the train station, and it just kind of slows down a lot. They're riding the train. They have to bail off the train before they get to the next stop because Mr. Big's spying on them. And these guys show up with Tommy guns and spray into the cart, and they kill the porter, but not them. And it's really funny. Our Bond throughout this train ride, and he's complaining about American food, and like he goes to hide out at this Greasy Spoon at like 5 a.m. in Jacksonville, and he's complaining about how awful everything is because he's just this snooty get British, and it's just so funny reading that. And eventually they go down to meet Felix near Tampa. They're at this cabana and they're talking, and he thinks it's safe to leave Solitaire there for the night while they go to investigate this place where Mr. Big's yacht, the Cicator, docks every once in a while. They go there and they meet a guy named the Robber who scares them off. They're not able to get through or whatever, and by the time they get back to that bungalow, the lady who runs the place, she's like, "Oh, sir, you might not want to blast your music that much if you're planning on." He's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, they had to take that big case into your room and unload the speakers." He's like, "What?" So he goes in and he finds that there's a big speaker there, but Solitaire's gone. So like, okay, so she's been kidnapped. And strangely, they didn't immediately think that obviously it's the Robber and that was a ruse, and they don't immediately run back down there. Instead, they just decide, well, we'll sit down and we'll have lunch and we'll have some cigarettes and drinks and think about what we're going to do. And eventually Felix decides to take up on his own accord to go down there early in the morning without Bond. And that's when Bond races down there and he finds out that Felix has been partly eaten by the shark because they returned his body to his bungalow. And he had to have his leg and his arm amputated. And it was like really gnarly. It's like, oh, geez. And Bond goes back to break into the Robber's place where you have all the aquarium, and he realizes the way they're smuggling the pirate gold is by putting it inside the aquariums with the tropical fish that they're shipping from the Caribbean to Florida. And Bond's like,
cocaine.
He covers his tracks. And this scene where he's trying to snuff out the Robber in the warehouse goes on for quite a long time. And I thought it lost a little bit of its luster, and eventually he kills him by feeding him to the sharks. Again, straight out of License to Kill, so that's great. And then Bond meets up with Coral, because this is the first book where we meet Coral.
Yeah.
This takes place. He also meets Strangways down in the Caribbean, and they come up with a plan. And basically, Bond's going to plant a limpet mine on the Cicator And he goes to do this, but he gets caught up like in the surf and having to avoid the sharks, and he ends up in the cave, and he sees all the pirate treasure in there, and Mr. Big's there. And in the book, they make the point that Mr. Big, his associates think he's actually Baron Samedi, and they play him up as being this really big guy, this big threat and all that. But there's never really any payoff to that, because he meets him in the cave, he discusses his evil plan, and then they tie him and Solitaire up to drag them behind the boat, and then the mine just explodes, destroying the ship. Bond and Solitaire are free from that. Mr. Big is seen surviving in the water, flailing around, and eventually gets eaten alive by the sharks.
Yeah.
And then happily ever after for Bond and Solitaire, going back to really banged up but ending up back at the bungalow. And I'm like, this book did a really good job in the beginning, building up how big, no pun intended, how large Mr. Big's operation was, and all the Baron Samedi stuff. And I'm like, ooh, this is going to be really neat. We're going to go down to the Caribbean and get into playing up the voodoo and all that. And it really isn't. It just kind of peters out for the second half, the last 160 pages. And I was like, oh, that was a little disappointing. And again, there's a ton of stuff we can't mention because I was at the bookstore a few days ago and I saw the new copyright 2023 version of Live and Let Die that was just published. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine the amount of editing they would have had to do to that
6 pages long.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's just not just the terminology that Fleming uses, but the way he's talking about Bond's reaction to reading about voodoo, and it's all black magic, and it's all evil, and it's so callous.
You said that Ian Fleming had used the phrase subhuman when it came to Slavs.
He did in Casino Royale, and in this one, he's just the words. I'm not going to say the stuff that he like the
hard R N words, hard R.
Like he talks about how seeing a black woman drive, that's a rarity. How could that be? And that type of stuff, and it's like, my God, this guy had his head so far up his ass. It's not. He must have been tasting his own tongue at that point.
Yeah, I know. And
it was too much. I mean, I kept reading through this, and I'm like, I can't imagine how much they would have had to edit from this book. But again, I still thought from a story perspective, it was setting up a really fun, adventurous type of story. That just kind of, again, got bogged down in an excessive amount of descriptions, which were never as rich as, say, when Stephen King is describing the diner, the 50s diner in 11/22/63.
Well, I'm not here to talk about Stephen
taste
King.
The grease coming off the plates of the food. Whereas in this one, it's kind of like
I could smell the brown people.
This, of course, being the edition I have. This is one of the reprinted ones from the 70s. But it was still a breeze through to read. And
do you not find the writing, if I may, not find the writing of Ian Fleming to be of its time? Like we've had many conversations before in regards to how they could please Barbara, if you're listening. We want a period accurate
Moonraker.
Yeah. Yep. And we want everything that is involved in that movie. And I think that the book of Live and Let Die, it's shocking with a lot of slurs, but it's also from the perspective of a colonial commonwealth, if you will, or empire, if you will. So, like, I don't like looking at the James Bond. I don't like looking at Ian Fleming and being like, you're a racist. I think that Ian Fleming is very English.
Well, I mean, even if you look at, I keep wanting to say Robert Markham, but let's face it, it's Kingsley Amis. When Kingsley Amis wrote Colonel Sun, which is basically professional fan fiction. It's kind of like Lune Carter and L. Sprague de Camp in the 50s, sort of rewriting or taking unfinished Conan the Barbarian stories and finishing them, or taking like Western stories and converting them into Conan the Barbarian stories. It's kind of like that, but I mean, but I think the writing is much better. And if you look at the Sebastian Faulks book, Devil May Care, the writings, and it's twice as thick as any of the Fleming books. But the writing is so much better. The pacing for a book that's 600 pages long is pretty good. And I think Fleming was very similar to sort of pulp writers like Robert E. Howard and Lovecraft. He had that kind of aesthetic, and it felt like that. He felt it felt like the writing was just enough to get the story told. And I mean,
yeah, but it was also very
books.
shocking.
Oh yeah, definitely, certainly
in the vernacular. And so if he was using words to shock you, he was, you know, a mildly astute author. I wouldn't call him.
Well, I mean, it is, like you mentioned, a more of a British colonialist perspective. And that's why, as we spoke of before, it's kind of pointless to re-edit the books because it's kind of a time capsule, because it's showing this is how he and other colonialists like him viewed the world and the things that were different about it. Like, he's constantly knocking on America for X, Y, and Z reasons, and everything from the government agents down to the food. And it's like, and he goes out of his way to mention one particular dish that he thought was a great American delicacy. And my God, the sheer amount of times these people are sitting down for like these continental sized meals for their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And he's like, oh, I smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and the amount of bourbon. It's like, dude, you're not looking like the suave, debonair guy that you're advertising in the books, if that's what
yeah. Oh, totally. I was watching.
James Bond has British teeth.
There's a quite. If you can see it on YouTube, actually, it's Harry Nilsson back in 1973 recording a little bit of Schmilson in the Dark. His sort of his album of standards, and you see his finger, the close up of his fingers, where he used to smoke 80 cigarettes a day, and they're like that, but
exactly.
much worse.
They're fucking orange.
But much worse than that. They're almost brown.
I've got the arthritis.
Yeah, he's got that as well. But yeah, and that's kind of.
They look like James Coburn in a snowstorm.
I did feel that the movie did a good job expanding on some of the characters. For instance, like rather than having it just be, Teehee is in the book, but he doesn't have the personality and the humor or the hook that he has.
He doesn't have like the metal clippy thing.
No, he doesn't have that either in the book. He's just another guy, and they call him Teehee because his laugh sounds like hee hee type of thing. But in the movie, I thought he was a great character because not only is he funny, you can tell he's really intelligent, and he kind of respects Bond in the way he was talking to him and stuff. Like, this is a great character. Same with another one who doesn't get enough praise was Tommy Lane as God, what's the guy's name? I think it was his name, Tommy.
Whisper?
No.
I like Whisper.
Yeah, it's Tommy Lane as Adam. Never mind, it's Adam. He's the guy who wears
Never met him. Oh, is he the guy that gets in the fight over the car?
Yeah, he's the guy who gets pulled over by JW for speeding, and then he steals his car to take off, and he stole his brother's motorboat. JW's motorboat.
That is actually an important question that I have, Kat. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is J.W. Pepper in the novel?
No, of course not. That boat chase is not in the novel either.
Oh. But then I you know what? I'm going to give up reading.
Well, speaking of J.W. Pepper, it's obviously he's in Man with a Golden Gun as well, right?
Right.
And it's funny you should bring up characters that are better in the films than in the books, because Scaramanga in the book is kind of just a hitman. He's kind of just a hitman. He's not a low-level thug, but he's kind of a medium-level thug, and he just kind of gets lucky. Whereas, even though the film's probably not one of the best, I think Christopher Lee's version of Scaramanga, Christopher Lee's Scaramanga is, Monsieur, so much better, Monsieur, so much better than the book, Monsieur.
Yeah, and the only reason the J.W. Pepper character is in the movie is because the screenwriters felt that they should have something juxtaposing all of the, more or less evil bad guy black characters and have a bad guy white character. And that's why the boat chase is like 13 minutes long, because it has this whole arc for J.W. Pepper in it. But Adam I liked because there's nothing. He's just like a regular guy, commanding presence. He's got the tweed outfit on. Real name actually is Tommy Lee.
J.W. Pepper isn't in Live and Let Die.
And he's from New York, right? He's a New Yorker.
He's not. I'm completally mistaken and derailing this conversation. No, he's in Man with the Golden Gun, and he's in Octopus.
He's not a Southerner. He's actually, I think he's actually a New Yorker.
What? Oh, okay, so what are the two movies?
Man with the Golden Gun.
J.W. Pepper is in Live and Let Die, and then Man with the Golden Gun.
What part of Live and Let Die? I didn't watch it.
The boat chase. Yeah. The sheriff.
There's a boat chase?
He's the sheriff.
Okay, you could pretend to not know what's going on. But anyway.
I will.
I did like that they also made the thing where they have Mr. Big and Kananga, because Kananga and that whole thing is not in the book either. He's just the mysterious Mr. Big, the drug runner, and so adding, or not the drug runner in the book, but like having Mr. Big and Kananga, that dual personality, I thought that was fun in the movie. And Baron Samedi being a whole separate character in the film, I thought was great.
Yeah.
Because again, they play up the idea. I thought it was a neat idea in the book that his followers think he's Baron Samedi and the zombie and are afraid of him, but then they never have a payoff to that when you get to the climax. And so, and not to mention, once Solitaire gets kidnapped, the book just goes on and all these scriptures on and on. I'm like, we need to get back to Solitaire and Bond and Mr. Big, because that's where the story was kind of excelling. And it just kind of got bogged down a lot. But the movie, I thought the pacing was much better. I thought the evil plan was more interesting, because it's not just, financing Soviet agents. He's like trying to corner the drug market basically and put the 5 families out of business, which initially I joked like, oh, cool, you're putting the 5 families out of business. Go for it, But and Yaphet Kotto certainly has a lot of charisma that he brings to that role that the character didn't have in the book. He was just, in the book, he's like this very intimidating, gray-faced man. It was just like he's seen some shit, it's not and then they didn't have the cab driver in the book like they have in the movie. I can't remember if he had a name or not. He's this, he's like, oh man, you give me $20, I'll take you to a Ku Klux Klan rally. Yeah, that was funny.
He's so that actor is so good. And also, this movie makes me feel comfortable with saying the word honky.
Yeah. Well, it's part of the title of an Elton John album, it's regional. So it works. No. But I was gonna say the boat chase. The boat chase was such a pivotal part of that movie that the 8-bit when I way back in the days of the ZX Spectrum in the UK, the game, the computer game that came out was entirely the boat race, the boat chase. That was the entirety of the game. So that's, were you playing Spy Hunter? Scene. It's just kind of a lame version of Spy Hunter, really.
No, it's an earlier version.
Oh, and then the alligator farm. That's another sequence that's not in the book that's in the movie, which is fantastic. And some of those gators are still alive today, as it turns out. And then they did stunts like that for real.
But when Kananga meets his ultimate demise, is it a compressed gas pellet that is shoved into his throat?
No.
At which point it explodes and he rises from the water, expands like a balloon.
Yeah, we get it. No. So
and then explodes.
Like I said, the mine blows up the cicada. He's in the water and he's swimming towards Bond and he gets eaten by sharks.
Yep, great.
And
justice is served.
And even though they tease that he's using the whole Baron Samedi thing, there's no like post-credit teaser of sorts with him being alive or anything like that, like you had with Baron Samedi in the film.
They do say that James Bond will return, which is relief.
No, I'm talking about they don't tease that Mr. Big survived because he's supposedly Baron Samedi, much like in the movie. Baron Samedi survives being shot and fed to a bunch of snakes in the venomous snakes, and then ends up
falling into a coffin. Yeah,
that was a funny story too. He says Princess Margaret was visiting the set that day, and initially he was very timid about doing it because they had actual venomous snakes in there. But then when he's like, "Oh, if she's on set, I have to do it now. I can't chicken out."
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you were to recast Baron Samedi,
like today,
which modern actor would you choose?
RuPaul.
Agreed.
Cat?
Yeah,
dancer, choreographer would be great. Whisper's in the book though. Whisper's there.
Well, that's obviously that would be. Who was in Jumanji?
David Alan Grier.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
No, but the Whisper character is in the book. He's not in the climax, but he's the guy who he's kind of doing all the radio contact for Mr. Big in America, and he still wheezes and stuff like that.
How you doing?
Yeah, played by Earl Charlie Brown in the film. And then Jane Seymour, of course, I felt was still accurately capturing what the Solitaire character was written as in the book as well, which was actually a pretty faithful transition from one character to another. But you didn't have the double-decker chase. You didn't have, of course, it wasn't a drug operation in the book. So In the movie, that whole thing is very different. Rosie Carver is not in the book either. That was somebody.
I like Rosie Carver though. She was cute as a button. I'm sad that she died.
Yeah, I miss it. So I think the movie, because it's funny when I heard people talking about how doing years ago, people said, wouldn't it be great if one of the Daniel Craig movies because they were trying to do things more grounded, if they did like a Live and Let Die type, more faithful adaptation. And I thought,
what if James Bond interacted with black people?
I thought that even by today's standards, for how watered down that some of the Craig movies were, it would have to be fluffed up quite a lot, because the story doesn't. It's like, okay, you go to Harlem, you run into a little bit of trouble with Mr. Big, you take a train to Jacksonville, you get off the train, Felix gets partly eaten, and then you have like one action scene after that with the boat. It's like not something that would fly. Because when it said like treasure hunt, everybody told me this is a story about a treasure hunt. I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of fun. And at first, it started out like it seemed like it was going to be really fun, but then it wasn't.
It's not.
But I do like
a lot of torture. There's a lot.
I do like the line in the book where they reference the title, because when a spy like gets busted, he's like, yeah. This one guy says,
really?
Yeah, he says, I usually like to live by the title, by the phrase "live and let live." If somebody comes after me, I don't need to kill him if I don't need to. Whereas Bond's like, well, if somebody comes after me, then in that case, I would say live and let die.
Yeah.
Okay, that kind of makes sense as to what the title means, because in the movie, it's just, adapting the book title.
I'm going to kill you.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to take a attempted assassination lying down, or somebody taking a swipe at me and just say, okay, whatever. It's like, no, I'm going to get you for that.
Well, also, let's not forget that James Bond is a cold-blooded murderer, and Live and Let Live is a mantra of pacifism, and Live and Let Die flips that on its head. So I will let you live until you get in my way, in which case, da-na-na, da-na-na, da-na.
I also liked that. Unlike in the book Dr. No, where Bond gets to go down to Station House in the Caribbean when he's in Jamaica, he doesn't get sent there in this book. It's like he's trying to be more undercover than he was in that situation, which I thought was kind of interesting, because he's actually, in a sense, behaving more like a spy, trying to be covert, staying at cheap motels, and we got to get off the train before we're going to be, because we've probably been seen by now. We got to do this, and so I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting, because he's being more careful than he has been in a lot of the other stories, where he just announces his presence. I'm James Bond, and that kind of thing. But it did feel like there was the middle portion of the story was kind of missing in the book, because it's like, okay, the beginning and everything going on the train, great. We get off of the train, and it feels like there's the midsection is pretty much just Solitaire being kidnapped, Felix being eaten, and Bond avenging Felix, and then all of a sudden we're at like the climax. It's just. So yeah, the book left a lot to be desired, but I think the movie's changes were good. It was a unique flavor for a Bond movie to visit, blaxploitation cinema.
Have you read the books beyond Live and Let Die?
I have, but it was a long time ago. So other than when I just started rereading.
So does Felix come back, or is like Felix out of the picture now?
Felix is in. Oh, hang on. Felix is in Casino. No, he's not. Casino. He's in Man with the Golden Gun. He's in Man with the Golden Gun. He's
later.
Yeah, Man with the Golden Gun is Man with the Golden Gun the last one?
Is he like Charles Gray, and you only live twice with one wooden leg?
Wasn't Live and Let Die like the second book? Or
yeah, he has a hook. He has a hook hand.
Casino Royale. Like this is the second book.
Yeah, it's the second book.
Felix was in Casino Royale, wasn't he? In the book? Yeah.
He's but in Man with the Golden Gun, he has a hook hand. He has a hook for a hand.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
If it isn't my old friend, Mr. McGregor, with a leg for an arm and an arm for a leg.
Yeah, that was problematic for him, especially going up and down stairs.
Yeah, there was.
I do like how they repurposed that scene with Felix and the shark and avenging him and live in License to Kill. I think it fits in that story rather well.
Well, that's the thing, and it was David Hedison as well. It's the same actor. You know what? We were going to do this to you like 20 years ago, and we thought, can we just bring it back? Because you're not going to be in the rest of the movie. You're not going to be. You're going to get married, and then you're gonna Don't worry about what's going to happen. Yeah, you'll go on honeymoon. It's going to be great.
The topless psychic is going to be your wife. Like everything. No, part of the reason that I enjoy Live and Let Die so much is because it is in the same way that For Your Eyes Only revisits on Her Majesty's Secret Service in terms of maintaining the continuity of James Bond. When License to Kill happens and you get David Hedison, and it's like, I remember him from Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
And he shows up again with Timothy Dalton. It makes the universe like fluctuate and everything meshes. It's so good. It makes it a cinematic universe. I love it.
Sort of, yeah. Because you have different roles shifting all the time, but yeah.
I mean, because
so I just like it. I don't question it. It just makes me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I do really love the movie because it did feel very different because Bond is very much out of his element in that, and I agree that Roger Moore is just doing the Saint, and even though I would say at 45 for his first movie, he's already a bit. It's like, okay, maybe that's as old as he needs. Maybe we shouldn't go too much further with him, even though they made 6 more films. But I think it wasn't as much parody in Live and Let Die, the movie, as there was in some of Roger's later films. That's what Sean Connery's opinion was in the 80s when he was asked, what do you think of Roger Moore? He's like, well, I feel that's more of a parody of James Bond than it is, James Bond. But in Live and Let Die, I thought he was actually trying to.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you still felt he hadn't turned on the absurdities yet. It hadn't gotten into absurd territory yet. I actually thought he did a good job in that.
Well, it's like, if you've seen the film North Sea Hijack,
I have not heard about it.
He plays a character, Roger Moore plays a character in that's kind of much closer to how Bond is in the books. He has a sense of humor, but it's dark. And and he's kind of
what?
Callous, and it's
there was a movie. There was a movie I saw with Roger Moore, and he made a guy eat a kilo of cocaine. Like he made him eat it with his hands. And I was just like, this is hard ass. So I've seen Roger Moore be much more aggressive than this film.
That's true.
I remember though that when I first got that 3-volume James Bond DVD set that they put out in like 1999 or so, that I got it like for Christmas, and I didn't have a DVD player. So the next day on Boxing Day, I went out to get buy a DVD player.
With the children.
And the first thing I wanted to watch was the making of documentary on Live and Let Die, because that had been my favorite movie at the time. I wanted to see how they made it, and I was surprised at how much of it was done like for real stuff. Like that boat sequence. I can't think of another boat chase scene in any movie that's as good as that, because they did it for real and revving these things at the high speed. They actually jumped it over the levees like that. I'm like, that is crazy. Why haven't we seen stuff like that in other movies since then? It seems like what passes for a boat chase in modern movies is have the camera move really fast alongside the boat while it's turning to make it look like there's action when it's not really doing anything. But that scene still holds up, and it's like, damn, that was pretty good.
I can't. Yeah. Like, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Is that like James Bond movies are sort of Mission Impossible movies have taken the throne a bit. And I'm looking forward to the new James Bond movies. But James Bond movies were why stunts mattered. Locations mattered. Seeing things filmed mattered. That's why I go to the movies. My dad, he calls them their Avengers movies cartoons, because they're all cartoons.
And
but when you go see a James Bond movie, it is action. It is the top being taken off of a bus. It is. You know what?
That's another thing they did for real. They rammed that double-decker bus into that thing while she and him were on the thing, and bam! I'm like, oh,
insane cool.
And and
like, I love these.
These movies also set the bar for the action in the first 3 Indiana Jones movies. Like, people expect you to do it for real. We're gonna do it for real. Yep. And that's what fans love. That's why I think with this summer's films being very CGI heavy, that's why I think something like Oppenheimer, which is, again, not what you'd think of for normal summer fare, I think that's going to do very well because it's a movie.
I heard that Christopher Nolan actually detonated a nuclear bomb.
Well, 3, actually. 3.
Yay! Hooray for the environment.
Well, they don't have the radium cores in it, so there's no radiation from it.
You don't have a radium core.
Yeah, but to think that, and that's another thing, when talking about how modern movies have lost what the early Bond films did, is that it was actually cheaper for Christopher Nolan to crash that jumbo jet into the hangar in Tenet than it would have been to do it CG. But plenty of other studios would have been willing to spend the extra money to do it CG because a lot of directors just don't have the ambition to do it for real anymore, and that's the problem.
Wasn't that the same deal with Casino Royale? Didn't they actually do like all the jumbo jet action?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they had a real plane there towing it out and everything, but they didn't blow that one up either. But or like in
James Bond saved the plane,
right? Or like in Back to the Future 3, where they took a real train, a life-size train, and they set it right off the cliff. And it's like,
no, that was a miniature
or a miniature, but it still looks real. You know, it's like
does look real.
They're taking pains to make it look real, which they don't do as much these days. And the James Bond films, you're right; those are the ones which kind of set the bar that fans kept coming back as they wanted to see it. Like when they blew up the Disco Volante, they blew that thing up to sky high and blew out windows 30 miles away.
Shit!
Like they did that for real, and that's why something like Live and Let Die still holds up.
And that's that car stunt, the stunt with the car where it went over the bridge and flipped.
Oh, the barrel roll, yeah.
The barrel roll. Oh, yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. Something. Yeah.
So anyway,
don't see anymore.
This is supposed to be Kat, please.
Yeah.
We do have chat. I would like to say hello.
That's what puts Live and Let Die movies like that still have a place today because fans like that they did that kind of thing for real.
I would like to say hello to Eugene Bird, Herc 130, my favorite flyboy, and somebody named Anti-Derivative Jill.
It was also back in an era where these movies would very often just come up with fake countries because they didn't want to damage the international appeal, and so they just.
Oh yeah, what's the name of the island?
Dominique, I think, or San Monique in the movie. And then, like in License to Kill, it's Isthmus or the Republic of Isthmus for again fictional places because they know that Bond has an international appeal and they don't want to offend anybody.
I just like the way that Pam Bouvier says Isthmus.
Yeah, and I like that they dropped all the Soviet stuff from the movie. I mean, admittedly, that is the reason that MI6 would be involved. But
I enjoy hating Soviets.
Right, but I'm saying that's admittedly the reason MI6 would be involved in the story. But in this one, it's like for the movie, it's like, oh, they assassinated one of our agents, and they never really said why Mr. Big felt the need to assassinate the British agents. But like, were they getting? Because M didn't have any extra information in the dossier for him about it, so it's not like they were getting close. He just kind of like they needed something to justify why James Bond and the British would be investigating this whole drug ring, and it's because he happened to kill one of their guys.
Yeah.
So I would like to. We were talking about this being a shorter show, and I just want to say that I appreciate Live and Let Die as being one of the most diverse Ian Fleming novels and cinematic outings. I think that it is globally acceptable. Some of the language may be abrasive, but if that is in the book, but I still think if language is abrasive to you, grow up and don't
actually, I read the book, and not once in the book did they use the N-word to describe any of the black characters in it.
No hard R?
No, they mention it in terms of a plant N-word head, which is a flower, but they use the other, the word Negro a lot. And
Negro, I don't know. That's a hard R.
Really,
or that's a soft R.
Yeah, but they never. I was surprised that he restrained in that way, that they never used that, which was nice. But
that is like, I think that's something to be highlighted, is that Ian Fleming did not use a hard R often.
No, but in a sense, it didn't, like, because the way he's talking about them and their religion and the culture, making it sound all evil and dark, and when it's really not. And so, that kind of thing. But
Black people don't believe in Jesus?
It's voodoo is a whole religion thing. It's not black magic.
I didn't know. I'm not a Buddhist.
Well, voodoo is a combination of Catholicism and various West African shamanistic religions. So Jesus has a place in voodoo because that's the Catholicism in it. It's just
that's why we brought you on, Tony, is because we wanted to advertise your church.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm a paid up member of the Church of Judas, and I believe I have to betray 3 people a day, so it's getting hard.
Also, I think this is one of the only Bond films which was actually released in the United States before it was released in the United Kingdom.
That's interesting.
This had its 50th anniversary for the American release back on June 27th, 15 days prior to its UK release, which was today, July 12th, 1973. Which was interesting because usually it's the other way around, and it has been for the longest time, where they put it out in Britain like a week and a half or 2 weeks early. Yeah. So I'm not sure why they changed that for this one, and maybe they did it for another one. I'm not sure, but this is the only time where it really jumped out to me. So that was something that I thought, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. But I also remember, I think the first time I heard it, I remember now the impetus for wanting to see this movie when I was a little kid, in terms of the order of all the Bond movies I was trying to figure out, because this is before the internet. I played the GoldenEye 64 game. And one of the bonus characters, and Baron Samedi is inside the level called the Egyptian Temple, and you get to play that, and he's like really spooky kind of character, and he's like immortal or whatever, and it's like, man, I want to see what movie he's in. It's gonna be fun. And so,
quick question: can you shoot the top hat off of Baron Samedi?
No, I've tried.
Damn it!
I have done the thing where on 007 mode, I turn up my health and accuracy to 0%, and I turn up the enemy health and accuracy to 1,000%. And it makes the Egyptian temple a terrifying level to try and win.
I'm really bad at GoldenEye. So.
But that's one of the reasons I wanted to. I'm like, oh, where's this character show up? And it was so surprising. And I like how the movie is kind of saying, on the one hand, that all the voodoo stuff of Mr. Big is just a put on, and the whole Baron Samedi thing to keep the locals at bay so that they can keep their drug operation going. But then at the end of the movie, they validate that it's actually real because he's on the train. Which I thought was kind of cool.
Like when I play GoldenEye, I play as Michael Madsen from Die Another Day, and I pretend that I'm being Vincent Vega from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame they never got around to making that Vega Brothers movie.
What were we gonna say before that, Tony?
I can't remember now. Something. Oh yeah, it was. I remember playing GoldenEye for the first time, and good God, the control system on the N64 was like, oh God. God, it's like, come on, can you not figure out that maybe having two analog sticks?
No, but Tony, come on, when you're talking about Nintendo 64, so I'm doing this. I'm doing this.
I got 2 thumbs.
When am I ever going to do this? I'm never doing this. I'm always doing this.
I got used to the N64 one like a second appendage. I found it really easy. In fact, I have.
You know what, Kat? I didn't know you still had thumbs.
Hey,
Tracy was very. I usually didn't. What annoyed me is I usually didn't do that. I would just go. But so yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, whatever.
But another effect they did in that movie I thought was really neat is that the first time Baron Samedi rises out of the grave, it's the actor, and you could tell. And Bond shoots him, but then he collapses like it's a scarecrow. And I'm like, but even when he gets shot in the head, he kind of looks up at himself, and you can tell it's still supposed so I can't tell. It's like, is the movie saying that's supposed to be the real guy who gets shot and turned back up again? Because then when you go down below, you realize he's not coming out of a grave. He's just coming out of the lower chamber because it's a put on. So it's like, I'm kind of confused.
Well, this is the crazy thing about this movie, is that it is kind of one of the darkest of the movies that
no pun intended.
No pun intended. It's one. I mean, thematically, it is pretty much the darkest Roger Moore Bond film. I mean, it has elements that a lot of the others. Wolf. Well, look at the others. You got Moonraker.
I would say For Your Eyes Only is darker.
Spy Love Me, actually.
Remember when it's pretty dark? So I would say that right when Baron Samedi rises out of the grave, before he hasn't done anything, he hasn't threatened anybody, he's just standing there, and Bond gets that huge fucking magnum that he's got, and he's gonna blow his head off just for standing there. That's pretty cold-blooded, cold-blooded Bond.
I think this movie has a silly tone, and I think that it is a blaxploitation voodoo movie. And I appreciate it, but I don't think it's dark in tone.
Don't forget. For Your Eyes Only starts off with a sort of parody of Blofeld, because they were really pissy. What's his Kevin McClory. They were still pissy at Kevin McClory. So we're going to kill him off. We're going to make sure that he's dead. And we're going to drop him down a chimney.
You're talking about For Your Eyes Only. We're not talking about.
No, I'm just saying. You say that For Your Eyes Only is the darkest, the darkest Roger Moore film, and it's like, oh, it's so goofy,
Well, when it comes to
even the assassination of her parents in the beginning, it's supposed to be like a dark scene, but something about the way it was shot, her reaction.
When is the 50th anniversary of For Your Eyes Only?
Not until 2031.
Yeah.
Then I'll see you later. Yeah. Tony, do you have anything that you would like to promote, or any final thoughts that regard?
I don't know if anyone really likes stealth games set in the Second World War, play Sniper Elite 5 now. It's really good.
All right.
Can
I get it on Xbox?
Yeah, it's fun. Although I've got to admit, some of they've messed up some of the mechanics. You can't climb on roofs anymore like you could in Sniper Elite 4. So I'm a bit miffed about that, but it's still really good. I'm still having fun with it, and it's it's stuff. It's got stuff in it. It's got lots of stuff in it. Yeah.
Oh, and also, Tony, what is your favorite James Bond movie?
Probably. Either from Russia. No, actually, probably.
I didn't ask for either. I said definitive.
Goldfinger.
Bingo. Goldfinger. Kat, where are you going to be on the internet this week? This year or this lifetime.
I'm gonna be on a Dead Reckoning review on the Burnetwork on Thursday evening, and
what is Dead Reckoning?
The new Mission Impossible, and I'll be back tonight for an Indiana Jones discussion.
I am looking forward to that. We're going to be graced by both Tom Jr. Jackson from Something Chat Show, and also Ernesto.
Potentially, yes.
Potentially, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully.
You know what? If we can't get Ernesto, then we're going to push it.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Good. Push it real good. Just like
my name is Scotty R37. I bother people all over the internet. I get to play with Antiderivative Jill, who you should subscribe to. And we talk about Star Trek. She also lets me play video games on her channel, which is fun. And on Fridays, she lets me swear. She's my internet friend.
But still not Sniper Elite 5, which is really good.
You should totes before you even check out anything that go check out Sniper Elite.